Lesson 1.8, Slope. Slope is the rate of change between any 2 points on a line. So slope is the change in y over the change in x. In a linear relationship, the vertical change, or the change in the y value, per unit of horizontal change, the change in the x value, is always the same. This ratio is called the slope of the function. The constant rate of change, or unit rate, is the same as the slope of a related linear relationship. The slope tells how steep the line is. The vertical change is sometimes called the rise, when the horizontal change is called the run. So we can also say slope is rise over run. So how far are we going up and down, and then how far are we going to the left or to the right? Count the number of units that make up the rise of the line in the graph shown above. Write this number for the numerator of the fraction below. Count the number of units that make up the run of the line. Write this number as the denominator in the fraction below. So if we look at this graph here, we need to first count our rise. So how far do we go up? So I start from one point to the next. I start at 1, and then I count 1, 2, 3. So I rose 3. And then how far do I run? Again, I start at 1, and I go 1, 2. So when you're doing rise over run or finding the slope, it's from point to point. You pick 2 points on your graph, and then you count up or down, and then left to right. Okay? If we turn to the next page, if we look at example A, another way that we can find rise over run, because sometimes it doesn't always work to where we can count it. Our points aren't perfect on our graph to where we can distinctly say it's at this point and at this point. So what we can do again is the change in y over the change in x. So if we look at example A, graph the data about plant height for a science fair project, then find the slope of the line. Explain what the slope represents in the work zone. So the first thing, I have my data, so I have my points, I'm going to plot them. Okay? Then after I plot them, it tells me I need to find the slope. Again, when I look at these, I'm in between, I have halves, so I wouldn't necessarily count on this one to find rise over run. So again, the other method we could use is find the change in y over the change in x. So when we find the change in y over change in x, the first thing we do is we pick 2 points. You can pick any 2 points on your graph. It doesn't matter. I'm going to pick 1 and 1.5 and 2, 3. So I'm going to pick the first 2. Again, you can pick any 2 points you want. Then I'm going to find the change in y, so I'm going to subtract my y values over the change in x, so subtract my x values. So 3 minus 1.5 is 1.5, and 2 minus 1 is 1. So I found my slope, which is 1.5 over 1. So I go up every 1.5, and I go over 1 every time. And then it says explain what it means. So we would say the plant grows 1.5 centimeters every week. Okay, so again, slope is the same thing as constant rate of change or unit rate. What are we changing by every time? Okay, next page, example B. Jessica has a balance of $45 on her cell phone account. She adds $10 each week for the next 4 weeks. In the work zone, graph the account balance versus time, find the numerical value of the slope, and interpret it in words. Okay, so before we even start, we have to find some values to graph here. So I'm going to go ahead and make a table down here. And I'm going to graph money over weeks. And let's say I'm going to do it for 1, 2, 3, and 4 weeks. So again, I have $45 in my account, and then I add 10 each week. So first week we'd have 55. Then I add another 10, 65, 75, 85. Okay, so now I have some points to plot. So I'm going to go up to my graph over here, and I'm going to plot these points. Okay, and then again it says find the numerical value of the slope. So I'm figure out what is my rise over my run. What is my change in y over my change in x? So what am I changing by every time? Again, the first thing I always try is, can I count rise over run? Well, these aren't right on the lines here, so it's really hard to count. So let's pick 2 points, and let's find the change in them. So I'll pick point 155, and 375. Okay, again, it doesn't matter what 2 points you pick, you're going to get the same slope every time. Again, I take my change in y, so 75 minus 55, over my change in x, 3 minus 1. So 75 minus 55 is 20, 3 minus 1 is 2. And again, we always got to simplify this down. So what can I take out of 20? I could take out of 2. I could take 2 out, so then I get 10 over 1. So we found the numerical value, which is 10 over 1, and then it says interpret it in words. So what does this mean? What does the 10 over 1 mean? The 10 over 1 means there's $10 added every week. And as you notice, our slope does not have labels on it. That's why they asked us to explain it, to say what does the slope really mean. Okay, and again, slope is the change in y over the change in x, or rise over run, which is the same thing as our constant rate of change and the same thing as our unit rate.